I know some of you guys are mostly disappointed that I'm not reviewing an episode from Season 5, since it's that season that people considered the least favorite, especially since that NNA's first 3 seasons were considered the best of the entire show. But to be quite honest, I found Season 4 and 5, despite some episodes, still entertaining to watch, even with the changes that the Eds had to go to school. But at the same time, I cannot stand the episodes that are considered bad, which I'm going to be reviewing right now. And believe me, this episode, Painting the Ed, is a prime example of just trying to have a running gag be the main focus of the entire plot, but makes the entire plot way more difficult to enjoy. So after Eddy completely used the rugs from one of his couches and put them on his elbows so that he can show that he has puberty, but at the same time, all it did is just cause him to get embarrassed. Which I have to admit, that's actually kind of funny considering Eddy is just trying way too hard to be older, except the fact that he is still a kid. And then we reach to Ed with a violin, and he has to practice because his mother told him to. I'm gonna get to that soon, because believe me, this is the biggest issue with this entire episode. So, Ed completely uses the violin, and as you can tell, he's awful at it. So bad that it grades Eddy to frustration and annoyance. But Double D, on the other hand, wants to have Ed completely play the violin more so that he can get better, even though that he won't. Now, Double D is only doing this because he loves the violin, while Eddy is just playing the role that he hates it. And this, in my opinion, as well, we see Double D is a joke in this episode. As you can tell, people have been discussing that Double D was being extremely selfish in some episodes when it comes to your Ed heel, and the other episodes where he's completely rude to Eddy when it comes to, well, in that episode where he completely didn't notice that the cell phone is causing all the destruction on Eddy, but here, he doesn't even care at the fact that Ed is a completely terrible violin player. So I honestly think that his motivations in this episode makes no sense, since that Ed is a terrible violin player. And as for Eddy, well, as much as I understand that he's really selfish and starting to become really stupid, I think you probably need to understand that what he's dealing with is completely understandable. Because I'm gonna get to that later. Double D actually has earmuffs on and just proves that Ed is a really terrible violin player, but he's not giving that up. And what does Ed do in this? Well, he just keeps playing the violin no matter what. Okay, I'm gonna stop the story on here and just get to the negatives right away. As you can tell, this episode is just trying way too hard to actually make the plot of Ed playing the violin and try to make it as funny as possible, but at the same time, it's obvious that he's not good at it. And the worst part is that Sarah is in this episode. Now, for any of you who don't know, we all hate Sarah, obviously. It's really no surprise that I cannot stand her character in the show. What's the biggest issue with her is that Mom Ed has to play the violin because Mom says so. And it's nothing more. There's no church that Eddy needs to go to in order to play the violin. School isn't happening until the following season. And second, it honestly makes Sarah just really unbelievable to have Ed play a violin that she knows he does terrible at. But Sarah completely told Jimmy to actually keep an eye on Ed playing the violin to make sure that Eddy doesn't destroy it. Do you want to see onto why people absolutely despise Sarah in the show is the fact the whole motivations do nothing but just trying to completely mess with her brother and has no caring whatsoever. And to add even more insult to injury, if Ed is just playing the violin just because, then it makes this episode really meaningless and uncalled for, especially since that I know people don't usually discuss about this, but Ed's parents are mostly abusive if they're just going to keep doing this kind of stuff. I mean, Ed, despite being stupid, he is still a better kid than Sarah since that he isn't ruthless and stuff. And just seeing him playing the violin, and we already know that he's not good at playing it, it makes the majority of this episode really, really pointless. Seeing WD enjoying the violin despite the fact how terrible it is, while Eddy is just completely fed up with it, along with Jimmy just keeping an eye on them. Seriously, how is this episode considered okay when it comes to people actually thinking that having Ed playing the violin would be considered humorous? As a matter of fact, it really isn't. Even when I watched this when I was a little kid, it wasn't funny at all. In fact, it's actually becoming way more stupider when the years gone by. Seriously, it's honestly annoying that the Eds don't even talk to the parents. Yes, I know, the kids only appear in the show, but with a plot hole, well, Ed is just playing the violin for nothing, that actually raises the question that they should probably get some answers from Ed's parents. Seriously. I mean, and to add even more questions, and it also raises more questions because in the season when they went to school, Ed is playing a different instrument. So I honestly think that him playing the violin in this episode is honestly really pointless since that he picks out a different instrument. So anyway, let's get into the bit where they had to use a scam in order to convince Sarah that it was all an accident. I honestly think that the portion of this episode involving the Eds just doing a scam just to destroy the violin is honestly unnecessary. I mean, when it comes to the scams that they did, at least they do it for quarters. But here, I honestly think it's just really awkward and pointless to actually do a scam just to destroy a violin. If you ask me, I honestly think that they only did this just so that Sarah can actually be dumb enough to be fooled. But at the same time, Sarah is just so ungrateful. Seriously, she is so ungrateful no matter what. If this plan actually succeeded, I honestly think that she would still tell on Ed's parents on the fact that the violin is destroyed. I know this is the portion of the episode that is considered good by some people, but to be quite honest, it's really nothing more. I mean, it is kind of great that the scam is a lot more bigger, but since it doesn't use for quarters or anything, it honestly makes this whole scam being completely wasteful. Believe me, if they actually did this scam for the kids at a different location, like in a construction site, then maybe they will probably get enough quarters to actually see the model of the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty. And as for the scam, the ending where the bowling ball almost hit Ed, well, Double D placed a magnet inside Wolf's pigs. I know he has a name, but still. And then when the pig completely got out, the magnet completely moved the holder, whatever you call it, away from the target, allowing Ed to move, causing the scam to fail. And it was all Double D's doing, and the only reason why he did it is because he's still in love with the violin. Okay, I need to discuss on the idea of WWE completely obsessing with the violin because of the legacy. I honestly think that the idea of having Double D completely finding some kind of attraction to violin would have been much more better if it happened at a different episode. Double D completely sees Naz playing the violin, and when he actually took notice of the violin and how he likes it has a legacy, and he also wants to hang out with Naz, despite the fact that it's mostly a shipping idea that I came up with. I'm not a shipper of Naz and Double D, I'm just laying it out there. He completely buys another violin if he managed to buy one, and then do practice sessions with Naz. And as for the rest, it's mostly debatable. That plot would have been much more better instead of what we've seen in this world. WWE is just Double D is just completely just obsessing with violin, despite the fact that he knows full well that Ed is completely terrible at it. Now look, I can understand that the motivations of Double D is just basically understandable because he's in love with the violin, but when you have a plot where Ed is completely playing miserably while also doing it for no reason at all, I honestly think that Double D is completely have no purpose in this. Seriously. This is the type of plot that actually makes him more selfish than anything. I mean, I get that destroying the violin doesn't solve all the issues, but at the same time, if this type of plot is constructed like this, while having Sarah being completely ruthless no matter what happens, then at this point, the only best thing he could do is just talk to Ed's parents about this. Seriously, that's really the only option, and actually tell them that he's not good at playing the violin. And if you're going to say that it was all Sarah's doing, then I mostly agree with you, but at the same time, I honestly think that she wouldn't go this far to have Ed do something so meaningless. So anyway, when Double D tries to get away from Eddy from destroying the violin, he trips, causing him to smash the violin, which completely made Jimmy call Sarah. And the ending of this episode is just Ed's playing on Eddy's hair strings. That's it. That's how this episode ends. This episode is just completely worthless. I wouldn't say that it's one of the worst episodes from the show, but it's still worthless. The season 4 of Eddy may be a somewhat decent show when it comes to the character still when the setting is still taking place in summer, and at the same time, I still have no problem with the Eds going to school. But this episode is honestly there just to show it wants to have a running gag, but at the same time, it isn't funny at all. Ed playing the violin isn't really funny whatsoever, and it's starting to become a ridiculous running joke. And the more you think about it of how this episode is constructed, it honestly makes you convinced that there's no reason for this episode to exist whatsoever. Believe me when I say this is that my idea involving Double D completely playing violin with Naz won't be a much more better episode idea than this. I honestly do not even care if this show is old. Sometimes these episodes can age really badly, and this is honestly one of the ones that is considered badly aged. And besides, with other ideas going on with the next season, despite the fact that I have less interest into reviewing the bad episodes, I honestly think that this episode could have been much more better if it actually wasn't like this. All in all, I know some of you guys are disappointed that I didn't review a season 5 episode, but maybe in the future I might when it comes to talking about bad episodes. I give this episode a 3.25 out of 10.